In the vast expanse of the Roman Empire, where absolute power met with unforgiving law, courtrooms became the stage for decisions that would shape the fate of nations and individuals alike. Throughout Roman history, many trials left deep marks, not just on the lives of those who faced judgment, but also on the very fabric of Roman society. Among these trials, one stands out in a unique way: the trial of Jesus under the authority of Pontius Pilate. However, this is just one chapter in a long history of judicial decisions that reflected Rome's legal practices, laden with political and social implications. In this video, we'll explore some of the most notable trials conducted under Roman authority, comparing them and understanding how they shaped history. Get ready to discover how Roman justice, in all its complexity, left a legacy that echoes to this day, revealing the forces that drove the empire and the challenges faced by those who dared to defy power. Roman justice, foundations and practices. Justice in ancient Rome was a direct reflection of the complexities of the empire. Based on a combination of written laws and precedents, the Roman legal structure established a system that prioritized order and social control. Roman citizens, especially the patricians, had certain rights that were rigorously protected, while slaves and foreigners were subject to much harsher legislation. Roman law evolved over the centuries, initially under the influence of kings and later shaped by the Senate and emperors, who molded the laws to suit their political needs. The Roman legal system was highly formalized, with a strong emphasis on rhetoric and the presentation of evidence before magistrates. Criminal and civil charges were handled with strictness, and the application of the law often reflected the political and social tensions of the time. Public law, in particular, was used as a tool of power by Roman leaders to reinforce their authority, punish dissent, and consolidate political alliances. These courts, therefore, were not just arenas of justice but also of power and influence. Moreover, the Roman justice system was marked by the presence of figures such as jurists and lawyers, who played crucial roles in interpreting the laws and defending the accused. Cicero, one of Rome's most famous orators and lawyers, stood out for his skill in manipulating the laws to defend his clients and attack his opponents. This environment of high tension and formality made each trial not only a quest for truth, but also a battle of power, rhetoric, and social prestige. Despite its complexity and sophistication, Roman justice was often biased and influenced by the social status of those involved. Trials frequently reflected the inequalities of Roman society, where the rich and powerful had more resources to defend themselves and sway decisions. This created an environment of uncertainty and, often, fear among the lower classes, who saw the legal system not as a protection but as a threat to their survival. In summary, Roman justice was a multifaceted entity, shaped by political and social interests. Its foundations and practices reflected the ongoing struggle between maintaining power and applying the law, creating a legal legacy that would continue to influence Western societies for centuries. The trial of Jesus, a singular case under Pontius Pilate. The trial of Jesus of Nazareth, conducted under the authority of Pontius Pilate, is one of the most iconic and debated events in history, reflecting the complex relationships between Roman power and the subjugated populations. Pilate, as the prefect of the province of Judea, constantly faced the challenge of maintaining order in a region marked by religious and political tensions. The case of Jesus became a crucial flashpoint in these tensions, representing a threat to both Jewish authorities and Roman rule. The trial against Jesus was marked by irregularities and political pressure. Accused of declaring himself King of the Jews, Jesus was brought before Pilate on charges of sedition, a serious crime against the Roman state. Pilate, aware of the delicate nature of the situation, tried to avoid a direct condemnation, recognizing the lack of substantial evidence. However, the pressure from religious authorities and the potential for a popular uprising ultimately influenced his decision to allow the crucifixion, symbolically washing his hands to renounce responsibility. This trial reveals much about Roman legal practices, especially in the context of the provinces. The administration of justice was, in many cases, subordinated to political needs and the maintenance of public order. Pilate's decision to yield to popular pressure, rather than follow an impartial judicial assessment, highlights the limitations of the Roman system when faced with issues of great social and religious sensitivity. The trial of Jesus not only had profound implications for the nascent Christianity, but also underscored the flaws of a legal system that, although robust in theory, was susceptible to manipulation and external pressures. The crucifixion of Jesus became a lasting symbol of the conflict between temporal power and spiritual truth, echoing in collective memory as an example of the injustices that can arise when the law is subverted by political interests. Ultimately, the trial of Jesus under Pilate exemplifies the complexities of Roman justice in a colonial context, where the balance between authority and justice was often distorted by the need to maintain control over a diverse and frequently dissatisfied population. The trial of Gaius Verres, corruption and justice in Rome. The trial of Gaius Verres, a Roman governor accused of extreme corruption in the province of Sicily, became one of the most famous and revealing cases of the Roman Republic. Conducted in 70 BC, the case was led by Cicero, who, in his first major public appearance, exposed the depth of corruption within the Roman government. Verres, who had extorted vast sums of money from the Sicilians and committed numerous abuses, became a symbol of the endemic corruption that was eroding the Roman state. Cicero, with his oratorical and strategic skill, managed to turn the trial into a large-scale political event. He used the case not only to convict Verres, but also to attack the corrupt practices permeating the Roman elite. His prosecution, compiled in the Verrines, became a masterpiece of legal rhetoric, exposing the flaws in the judicial system and Rome's inability to protect its provinces from exploitation by their own governors. The trial of Verres was a landmark in Roman history, as it demonstrated the legal system's potential to be used as a weapon against corruption, but it also highlighted its limitations. Verres' defense, which initially attempted to bribe the jurors and manipulate the process, revealed how power and wealth could distort justice. However, public pressure and Cicero's ability to mobilize public opinion were decisive in securing Verres' conviction, who ultimately fled Rome to avoid punishment. This case exemplifies the ongoing struggle within the Roman system between justice and corruption. While Verres' conviction was a victory for Cicero and the cause of justice, the fact that Verres escaped without paying for his crimes shows the limitations of the Roman legal system when confronted with powerful individuals. Still, the trial was an important step in the effort to reform the system and reinforce the ideal of integrity within public administration. In the end, the trial of Gaius Verres became a lasting example of how Roman justice could be effective, but also vulnerable to the influences of power and corruption. The lessons from this case resonate to this day, reflecting the universal challenges that all societies face in trying to balance power and justice. The trial of Socrates, Roman influences and reflections. Although the trial of Socrates took place in Greece, its impact and the philosophical reflections it generated deeply influenced Roman culture and thought. Socrates, accused of corrupting the youth of Athens and impiety, was condemned to death by hemlock in one of history's most famous trials. Socratic philosophy, passed down through Plato's dialogues, became a fundamental part of Roman thought, especially during the Republican and imperial eras. The Romans, admirers of Greek culture, incorporated many aspects of Socratic philosophy into their own judicial and ethical practices. The idea that justice should be based on truth and reason, rather than merely being a tool of power, resonated among Roman intellectuals. However, the practical application of these ideas in ancient Rome often conflicted with the political and social realities of the empire. The trial of Socrates also served as a warning to the Romans about the dangers of allowing fear and prejudice to influence justice. Socrates was condemned not for his actions, but for his ideas and for questioning established norms. In Rome, where freedom of expression was limited and dissent could be dangerous, the example of Socrates reminded citizens of the risks associated with challenging the established order. Reflections on the trial of Socrates influenced debates on freedom, justice, and the role of the citizen in Roman society. Philosophers like Seneca and Cicero wrote extensively on these themes, using the example of Socrates to argue for a more ethical and rational justice. However, the tension between philosophical idealism and political pragmatism continued to define legal practice in Rome. Thus, while the trial of Socrates occurred in another time and place, its implications were deeply felt in Rome. It served as a mirror through which the Romans could examine their own legal practices and the values underlying their system of justice. Boudica and the Judgment of Rebellion, Rome against the Celtic Fire. The revolt led by Boudica, Queen of the Iceni, against Roman rule in Britain resulted in one of the most violent and significant confrontations in the empire's history. Boudica, after suffering abuses at the hands of the Romans, rallied a massive force of Celtic tribes to resist the occupation. Although there was no formal trial of Boudica in the traditional sense, Rome's response to her rebellion reflected the legal and military mechanisms used to suppress dissent. After Boudica's final defeat, Rome enforced a policy of brutal repression, not only against the rebels but also against anyone associated with the uprising. The legal consequences for survivors included enslavement, summary execution, and property confiscation, practices that fell within the scope of Roman law for dealing with rebellions. These actions exemplified the application of ius belli, the right of war, which allowed the Roman state to exercise extreme punishments in times of conflict. The case of Boudica also highlighted how Rome used trials and justice as tools of intimidation and control. While Boudica evaded capture and trial, her name and her revolt were used as examples of what happened to those who dared to challenge Roman power. Roman propaganda depicted Boudica as a savage barbarian, while exalting Roman discipline and justice, reinforcing the narrative of the empire's cultural and legal superiority. This event demonstrated the duality of the Roman legal system, which could be both just and brutal, depending on the circumstances. Justice, in many cases, was subordinated to the need to maintain control over the provinces and ensure the continuity of Roman rule. Thus, the treatment of Boudica and her followers exemplifies the fine line between justice and oppression that permeated the empire. Ultimately, Boudica's rebellion and Rome's response serve as a powerful reminder of how justice can be manipulated to serve the interests of the state, especially in contexts of conflict and resistance. The story of Boudica remains one of the most fascinating and tragic of the Roman era, symbolizing the desperate struggle of a people against an unyielding empire. The case of Sextus Roscius, Cicero, and the power of rhetoric. The trial of Sextus Roscius in 80 BC is a prime example of how rhetoric and oratory skill could be decisive in the Roman legal system. Roscius, a landowner of humble origin, was unjustly accused of parricide, the murder of his own father, a crime that carried deep stigma and severe legal implications. The accusation was orchestrated by powerful enemies who sought to seize his family's land, using the legal system as a weapon to achieve their goals. Cicero, then a young lawyer on the rise, took on Roscius's case despite the significant risks involved. The case was delicate, as it involved influential figures in Rome, and victory seemed unlikely. However, Cicero saw an opportunity to showcase his abilities and establish his reputation. He crafted a brilliant defense, not only dismantling the charges against Roscius, but also exposing the corruption and injustice within the Roman legal system. Throughout the trial, Cicero used his rhetoric to create a compelling narrative, presenting Roscius as the victim of a vile conspiracy and portraying his accusers as greedy and morally corrupt individuals. His argument was so persuasive that it turned the trial in Roscius's favor, leading to his acquittal. This case marked the beginning of Cicero's career as one of Rome's greatest lawyers and orators, highlighting the power of words in the Roman judicial context. The trial of Sextus Roscius also reveals the fragility of the Roman legal system when manipulated by those with resources and influence. While justice prevailed in this case, it was only through the intervention of a brilliant mind like Cicero's that the truth came to light. This episode underscores the importance of rhetoric in ancient Rome, where a man's fate could be decided not just by evidence, but by his defender's ability to tell a convincing story. The case of Roscius, therefore, is not just a tale of justice restored, but also a reflection of the inherent dangers in a system where power and influence could distort the truth. It illustrates how, in Rome, oratory was not just a legal skill but an essential weapon in the pursuit of justice. Consequences and legacies. How trials shaped Rome and the world. The trials of ancient Rome, from the most famous cases like those of Jesus and Gaius Verres to lesser-known ones like that of Sextus Roscius, had profound impacts on the formation of Roman society and its legacy. These trials not only resolved individual disputes or punished specific crimes, but also shaped the norms, values, and practices that would define Rome and, eventually, the Western world. Roman judicial processes were more than mere applications of laws. They were moments where the social, political, and cultural tensions of the empire converged and were publicly exposed. Each significant trial revealed the strengths and weaknesses of the Roman system, showing how the law could be both an instrument of justice and a tool of oppression. The legacy left by these trials directly influenced how justice was conceived and applied in later civilizations. Furthermore, many of the principles and practices developed in Roman law during these trials became the cornerstones of the Western legal system. The idea that law should be grounded in reason and justice, championed by philosophers and orators like Cicero, resonates today in modern constitutions and legal systems. Similarly, the public trials of figures like Jesus and Boudica demonstrate how justice can be manipulated to serve political ends, a theme that remains relevant in contemporary contexts. The trials also help define Roman identity and morality. By judging not only the actions but also the intentions and character of the accused, Rome established a tradition of seeking not just punishment but understanding human motives. This focus on morality and legal ethics inspired not only Roman legislation but also philosophy and literature, shaping how Romans viewed themselves and their role in the world. In the end, the trials of ancient Rome left a legacy that transcends time. They serve as powerful reminders of the complexities of justice and power, illustrating how, even in an advanced and organized society, justice can be both an ideal and a tool of control. The impact of these trials is still felt today, in laws, courts, and the ongoing pursuit of fairness and justice in societies around the world.